glad to be here.
Good afternoon, I'm Carl Thomas, in 2 and 6 with the Navy, Director of Navy Intelligence and DC Unit for Information Warfare. Started my Navy career out flying E-2 Hawkeyes in the back, looking at radar scopes. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of command and control, and it's kind of interesting what happens over the years. Back in the late 80s, flying in the back of the Hawkeye, you had to fly an MCON as you were trying to close the Soviet Union, and you had to worry about long-range reconnaissance aircraft coming out to see you, and you had to maneuver and everything to keep the radars off. So we're in an interesting time as we look going forward. We just have better tools right now. But I finished my flying career, went into the nuclear power pipeline, and was privileged to command both the USS Abraham Lincoln and the Carl Vinson. And then as a strike group commander out of Japan in the 7th Fleet just before I came back here. Interesting fun fact is when I turned over the Abraham Lincoln, I actually turned it over to my brother-in-law, which has never happened in the world of carrier change of commands. And my wife likes to take credit for all of that. I am one of those that has a kid serving in the Navy. He's going through the Growler FRS right now, so pretty important what I do right now in his future. I look forward to chatting with him.
Cool.
Thanks, Carl. Well, I'm going to ask everybody.
Concerned about. I think my biggest concern right now is just the blatant disregard for the rules-based international order. And you can pick up the paper today and you can see what the PRC is doing in the South China Sea at Sabina Shoal, which is the launch-off place, the second Thomas Shoal. And if you look back in history to about 2012, you can think back to Scarborough Shoal and how they kind of ousted the Filipinos. At that point, that's all within the economic exclusion zone. And so I worry about what we're seeing in the escalation in the South China Sea with an ally, against an ally. It doesn't take much looking a little farther to the north and seeing that North Korea is supplying Russia in their illegal war against Ukraine, another blatant disregard for rules-based international order. In the Red Sea, you have the Houthis going against free shipping through a huge shipping channel. Again, the global disregard for rules-based international order, and then what could appear as a little bit of collusion by the folks that are maybe our adversaries is what I worry most about.
Leveraging drones, a multitude of things. That fight, the lessons you may take away from that fight, or the lessons that are germane to that fight, not everything's fungible. So I'll just kind of open this up, whoever wants to jump on it first, but what are you taking away from what you're seeing in Ukraine that you think is worthy of infusing into the force, and how you think about the next fight, whether that be China or America?
I'll jump on first. I'll stay on the Navy lane a little bit. I think it's pretty clear that the asymmetric capability that the Ukraine, who didn't really even have a Navy, has been able to levy on the Russians is pretty impressive, quite frankly. You got basically the Russian Navy, Black Sea Navy pinned to the eastern side of the Black Sea because of what the Ukrainians are doing with unmanned surface and unmanned underwater capability. And what I really like about it is, let me back just up a little bit. The first lesson we got out of there was the importance of anti-ship cruise missile defense when the Slava got hit. That was the first, ship attack, and then they've gone into the unmanned world. And what I really like about it is what unmanned should be doing. The dirty and the dangerous missions, and the learning that's happening, and the way that they're having to evolve. There's tons of lessons that we're pulling down from that, and then you can translate that to other theaters, and you can have an outsized effect. And what I really like, it's expensive to build ships. And it takes a long time to build ships, and what we have today is what we're going to be fighting with. But you might be able to build a lot of little things that don't cost as much and have an outsized effect, or help out other people to have that outsized effect. So I'm excited with what we're seeing. The learning has been amazing, and the turning of the lessons is probably the biggest thing we're learning.
I think another important element of this was remembering sort of December movement over the holidays, and in January there was a lot of travel of senior defense officials and national security officials, Director Burns, Director Haynes, and they were meeting both allies and adversaries. And they could say what they were seeing. And when they could say what they were seeing to others, you know, if it was an adversary, they were denying, right? But there was an image to show it. If it was an ally, they were questioning, and then there was an image to show. And much like in the past, inside secure facilities in foreign capitals, we convinced our allies. But this time, unlike other times, we then empowered our allies with the ability to show it to their public, because it was commercial, unclassified imagery. And they were able to share it with the European public and gain support. And in the past, we've been sharing very classified images with national security officials in other countries. Yes, we believe you, America, but they couldn't do anything after that. So the ability to use the commercial remote sensing industry to help empower and fortify U.S. diplomatic initiatives prior to the war was critical.
I think that's a really good point, sir. If I can take a little bit further, the information space was done. It's like, never before have we seen in a modern fight the race to get to social media to put the message out, and for all sides. Definitely, I was surprised at how much information that we were willing to use for information diplomacy, but it made a lot of sense. But watching both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, use that information space to try to either amplify their message. In some cases, there may even be some misinformation or disinformation out there. That was a case study in itself, something that we hadn't seen. But that's a TTP that we should expect to see moving forward. And those that are able to operate in that space are going to be good, and those who aren't will probably suffer quite a bit. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over is that, and I am not here in the cyber capacity, but there's a need to harden your networks. And you have several use cases out of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict that really point to that.
And don't take yourself overboard. Right? You got a lot of Russians that don't follow those orders to our advantage. Andrew.
Yeah, so listen, it's easy to sit in the Pentagon and think that you have great ideas for innovation, and I think if you walk around the booths, everybody has great ideas for innovation, but you know who the best innovators are? The people who have to innovate or they're going to die the next day, right? So the battlefield innovation that's occurring in Ukraine is somewhat unprecedented. General Ashley talked about drones. Let's just talk about that for a second. So we are now at a time in our history, or we've created history now, where a $500 drone is defeating a $20 million piece of armor. And that's a pretty good ROI if you're Ukraine or if you're Russia using the other side. So we got to start thinking differently in how we acquire weapon systems. We're doing that inside the Army today, trying to understand what that right acquisition looks like, what the scale of that looks like. And then one really unique area that's coming out of that is we believe in the Army that we are underinvested and need to double down on EW, right? Both protection and then offensive capabilities. And in specific, EW reprogramming. Right? So what I mean by that is the threat will adapt just as fast as you come up with a new technique. And so you've got to be able to adapt even faster to that technique. So if you start to do battlefield innovation and you see that your effects are being diminished, we have to be able to respond to that very quickly. So the ability to reprogram our EW systems to adapt to threats is going to be very vital. We're seeing that in Ukraine.